Everybody, hello. Great. So, yeah, choose Bitcoin. Yay. Let's start off this morning by agreeing that there's a few things in the world that are difficult to justify. So, every digital payment that you and I make is being tracked, and this, we are told, is for our protection. The money in your bank account isn't yours, and so this woman in Lebanon is robbing a bank in order to get her money back. And any government has the means to extrajudicially freeze or seize your money if you speak out against them. So if you agree these things are ridiculous, if you are filled with an inspiration to change the world, I encourage you to choose Bitcoin. Yay! Bitcoin fixes this. Bitcoin's inevitable. Is that something that we believe here? Is that something that, if you think with just the passage of time that these things are just going to happen? So I want to take the next 20 minutes to talk about a way I'm confident that you can affect the future and leave an indelible mark. For those with the skills, I believe the truest and purest way to opt in to choose Bitcoin is to choose Bitcoin open source development as a career. So over the years, I've struggled to find the best way to describe the scope of this work. I've called it Bitcoin infrastructure, I've called it Bitcoin FOSS, but starting today and forevermore, I'd like to rebrand this as BOSS. So I've never started something viral. I have no idea how social media works, but if this doesn't work, then I have no faith in humanity. Stacy and Christoph are out there. They have set up swag and memes to will this thing into existence. If you could just call it BOSS going forward, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about BOSS contribution. By my calculations, there are about 150 funded BOSS developers. So it's a little hard for me to draw a hard line of what kind of projects are in BOSS and what kind of projects are not in BOSS, but it's roughly 150. And if you're interested in learning more about funding or interested in learning more about specifically Bitcoin Core funding, there's a talk coming up about how that works. But I'm here for a very specific purpose. I'm on the hunt for 151. So number 151 surely knows that money is a technology that has been around as long as society itself. But I think we should all just take a moment to reflect and maybe even be awe-inspired by the fact that we are reimagining this money. We are reinventing our money from scratch in an open digital form. It is a tall task. And even though Bitcoin is narrowly focused as being a true native currency for the internet age, it's hard. It's hard to do something new and different. It's hard that we're not just contorting our old money into something ostensibly digital. Because Bitcoin is not a refactor. Bitcoin is a rewrite. So this isn't disruption in the way that you're going to read in the standard hype deck. This is a rejection of the status quo. And so while we are aware that Bitcoin is a peaceful resistance, it's a resistance nonetheless. Cypherpunks discussed this project for decades, and then someone made it. Bitcoin is a check on the powers who seek to control their citizenry through financial controls and mass surveillance. Bitcoin was created to cause trouble. And there are 150 of us out there that are trying to do nothing less than pull off one of the greatest hacks of all time, to replace the world's money with a new money, a better money. We are an ideologically driven group of nerds who think that we can do better. So I'd argue that this is a unique period in the arc of this project. And I don't have my own personal conviction yet squared away on whether we're going to be able to realize the audacious goal of making this new money the default standard for the world. But you've got to admit, we've gotten pretty far. And that's not some happy accident. People have worked extremely hard to get here. Now, to get the rest of the way, we need to build something that can last, something that can weather the changes in history and outlive us all. We are building a digital cathedral, something beautiful, something full of meaning and purpose, something to be proud of. From the start, this was not meant to be a move fast and break things endeavor. The cryptography is battle tested. The pace of development is deliberate because this is our chance. This long-term vision was coded into the first release. The halvings are programmed until 2140. Have you ever heard of a piece of software that was designed to last over 100 years in the original release? So for this to succeed, we need craftspeople, and we need people that care. Not because someone told them to care, or they're trying to collect accolades to pad their resume or looking for a promotion, but because they believe in what they're doing and are willing to raise their hand to do the work that needs to be done. Another quality that requires constant vigilance is Bitcoin's reliability. Because most software breaks, and Bitcoin is only seen as trustworthy because it doesn't stop working. But what outsiders miss is all the work that goes into smoothing over the cracks. They see the serenity on the surface, but are blind to the furious kicking beneath the waterline. Which means that you, as 151, are not going to be spinning up a new repo. The job needed is one of uncelebrated support of others. Stepping up to write that fuzz test, asserting to that reproducible build, monitoring the upstream dependencies, and all the things that keep Bitcoin going. Because despite the meme, Bitcoin is not inevitable. The point of the Warnet game last night, if you had the pleasure to attend, is to reinforce that Bitcoin Core, which is viewed as a gold standard of reliability, is far from a perfect piece of software. And the stress of keeping this critical code from destroying $1 trillion market is on the shoulders of just a few dozen people. They don't do it for prestige. I doubt you know many of their names. They do it because, despite the nonsense that you read on Twitter, they are the most optimistic Bitcoiners in the world. They do what it takes to keep this thing going. And they are building the future that they want to see. The autonomy to choose the work of highest importance is a freedom that takes some getting used to. There's no manager to tell you what to do. No one's saying how to define your own success, how to direct your attention and your focus, and how to structure your day. This kind of freedom requires initiative and self-awareness, and it takes a special person to be excited by these lack of constraints. So if this speaks to you, the good news is there's no gatekeepers, no HR screens, no minimum requirements, no pedigree necessary. There's nothing preventing you from jumping in. And it doesn't matter who you are if you can add value. And this means that you're going to work with some of the most talented people that walk this earth. And they don't care about your experience. They don't care about your background. They don't care what it says on your LinkedIn. They only care what you can do. A few examples. This is Rob. Oh, he's waving his hand. Rob did data science in college, and when he graduated, he had a junior data science job that he worked. Rob, however, cares about Bitcoin, and he wanted to do more. And so starting in April, Rob got excited about contributing to BDK and working on Kyoto, which is a compact block filter backend. And Rob put in the work. And Bitcoin is better because Rob is here. This is Space Bear. Space Bear's been working on PageJoin for the last few months. And the work done by whoever's behind this NIM is thoughtful and comprehensive. You don't need a pedigree. You don't even need a face to be able to contribute. NIMs are welcomed and appreciated. There's no background checks required. So it's clear that this person, whoever it is, has a lot of professional software experience and cares deeply about personal privacy. You see, Space Bear is improving Bitcoin's privacy because Space Bear cares about privacy. And Bitcoin is better because Space Bear is here. This is Josie. So I met Josie back in 2021, and he used to work in big tech. And he was really into Bitcoin, and he was looking for ways to contribute. So from the beginning, Josie had a firm sense of the philosophical reasons of his Bitcoin involvement. And for the past few years, he's been putting his principles into practice by working on various projects around Bitcoin Core. Last week, he announced that he and Ruben Sampson are going to start an office called 2140 for Boss developers in Amsterdam. And Bitcoin is better because Josie is here. This is David. This is the best picture we could get of David. I don't know if that's I don't really know what it is. But 5 months ago, David was an algebra teacher in Baltimore. But David had a goal. David wanted to be a Boss developer. He has no CS degree. He has no formal engineering experience. But he worked hard. He worked really hard. He took calls in between periods in empty classrooms. And David, a couple weeks ago, just opened a PR knocking 25% off initial block download in Bitcoin Core. And Bitcoin is better because David is here. It's not a mystery how to become valuable. You do useful work, you tackle hard projects, you develop expertise in complex areas that need work. And if you do that, you will create immense leverage for your effort. All right, I'm going to try to say this in a little bit more of like a pitch way. So here's the elevator pitch. Put on my recruiter hat, and I say, we are a 15-year-old organization with a track record of reliability. We've had no downtime for over 10 years, and we have product market fit as an inflation-resistant savings technology with our sights set on becoming the default payment rail of the world. We're growing. We have a $1.3 trillion market cap and have doubled since last year. No egocentric founders to worry about, no VCs to satisfy. Our engineering team is 150 people distributed around the world, and as a member of that team, you get to choose of what you think is of personal importance and work on whatever you think is most impactful. No need to interview for a role with us. If you've got the skills, you've got the drive, then you can start immediately. What do you think, 151? Interesting? I did not account for the clapping. And maybe most compelling is that Bitcoin has got the hardest and most interesting problems. We've got the best problems. Bitcoin sits at the intersection of economics, game theory, philosophy, security, and of course, computer science. It's a distributed system deployed in an openly hostile environment that values privacy and intends to scale across the globe. In short, this is a monster challenge. And it's not just a theoretical challenge. Bitcoin is the biggest honeypot in the history of the world. And yet, there's been no downtime in 10 years. And this is despite tens of thousands of nodes running on Raspberry Pis and Amazon data centers, gossiping transactions and blocks in the most adversarial conditions imaginable, all with a code base that anyone can audit. And yet, Bitcoin just keeps running. And it's not like people aren't trying to break it. Bitcoin is where cypherpunk values and code meet. So, I told you that we need to defend the decentralization properties that make Bitcoin valuable over the centralized alternatives. So how do you incentivize decentralized mining that can compete with centralized pools that pose such an existential risk to the system? Maybe it's Braid Pool, a decentralized mining pool proposal, improving on the issues faced by P2 Pool by using a DAG to track shares and allow miners to build their own blocks. I told you that we value reliability because the expectation is that our money cannot break. So how do you ensure that nodes have a sufficiently diverse set of peers to prevent network partitions and eclipse attacks? Maybe the answer is the ASMAP project, which aims to map which ISPs control which addresses across the internet. And this raises the bar for attackers that can take advantage of the fact that ASNs have addresses in multiple /16 network groups. I told you that Bitcoin values individual privacy, something that Josie told me that he cares about. And so maybe the answer's, well, how do you privately reuse Bitcoin addresses for donations then? And so maybe the answer is something like silent payments, a non-interactive address generation scheme without any on-chain overhead. And I told you that to achieve our goals, we need to be able to operate at global scale. So how do you take Bitcoin transactions off-chain to increase settlement speed and lower transaction fees? Well, a lot of the 150 think that Lightning can help. None of this is going to happen through passivity. These projects need competent people who care. Bitcoin's a good idea. And this is an opportunity to join a legacy of troublemakers looking to disrupt the status quo. They are there to solve a set of technical problems previously thought to be impossible. And so if you're looking for what to do next, if you're looking for your first step in this journey, I have 3 biased suggestions. The first is Bitcoin Research Day. So we are hosting this in the Chain Code offices next month. Spaces are pretty limited at this point, but we have room for people. This is the second time we've been hosting this, and it brings together a unique set of people talking about useful ways to improve Bitcoin. So we saw this spur a bunch of collaborations last year, and we expect the same this year. The second is the Bitcoin Dev project. So this has been something that I've been working on for the last couple years. If you go to bitcoindevs.xyz, you'll find a bunch of reading and a bunch of coding tutorials, as well as pointers to projects looking for contributors. As part of this project, we also wrote a book, which we're giving away to make sure it gets in as many hands as possible. It's written by Calais and Lene Rosenbaum. I think it's excellent. You should get a copy, and you should read it. But I caution you on one thing. When we read and we absorb other people's work, we fall into a common trap. And so it's important to gather historical context, but please take an active role. The simple formula to onboard into an open source project is to download the project, run the software, find the bugs, and fix them for everybody else. Reading is an inherently selfish act, an important one, but selfish. And so when you absorb this knowledge, please do something with it. Third, last year, we ran a program with the goal to help a group of total strangers get off Boss 0. So to make sure there was no confusion about the goals of the project, we called it Start Your Career in Bitcoin FOSS. Pretty straightforward, and we had a really good group show up. So if you played around with Warnet or you went to the Rust workshop, you've run into some of our participants. But I want to highlight these folks. So these are 8 devs funded to work on Bitcoin from 5 different funding sources. And I'm grateful to Matthew Zipkin, who helped design the curriculum for us. But something that I'm really happy about is that these are really nice people. There isn't a jerk in this group. And you're not going to see them harassing each other on Twitter. They have real work to do. They are talented devs, but what makes them remarkable is the choice that they made. And after running education programs both in and out of Bitcoin for more than a decade, it's clear that the exceptional people are those that are willing to take an active role in going after what they want and building the future that they want to see. We know that there's a lot more people like this out there, and so we're going to run this again. In January, we're going to launch a new cohort, and our goal is to create the highest quality group of funding-worthy BOSS contributors that we can. So I'm proud of the last cohort, obviously, but I think we can achieve bigger and better results. Our only metric of success is funded Bitcoin open source contributors. It's free, it's open, and though Bitcoin open source contribution requires no permission, if you're serious about changing your career in 2025, I encourage you to join us. Are you living in the future that you want for yourself and those you love? A world where every digital payment that you and I make is tracked. A world where our money isn't ours, and a world where any government has the means to freeze or seize your funds if you speak out against them. The powers that be are rooting for us to fail. They're waiting to tell us that we were wrong, that our toy is of no real use, that we have no alternative but to turn back to the status quo and the machinations that power it. If Bitcoin breaks, this experiment is over. Now, you're going to have the option to join a startup or start your own thing. And big tech is always going to have job interviews that you're going to be eligible for. But Bitcoin open source is a gift. And the intentions of Bitcoin open source are pure. It's a labor of love given away by extraordinarily competent devs who are optimistic about the positive impact this technology can have on the world. Boss devs care about digital payment surveillance, control over your money, and governments seizing your funds. And they're willing to put their careers where their principles are. And so, all that remains is to ask the question, are you 151? When you join us, you'll be part of this structural change in Bitcoin open source development. Together with Rob and Space Bear and Josie and David, you can usher in a new era of builders who lend fresh energy and fresh perspectives to the problems that Bitcoin is designed to solve. If you are here, if you are in this room, if you had the good sense to come to this conference, then you already have tailwinds behind you. But when you're done, when you look back on your career, the question is, will it matter? There's a career waiting for you that requires no interview and can change the world as we know it. If you are 151, it is my job to help you. And I suggest that you join us in January. This program works, and there's walking examples of it in this room. If you can't wait, you can come find me in the halls. I'm personally pretty skeptical that Bitcoin can solve all of our ills. But we have this gift, this brief window in time when we have the chance to build something better. This opportunity will not last forever, and we need to take advantage of it with people prepared to move their role in the story from passive cheerleader to active contributor. Because the future will be determined by the doers. And Bitcoin will be better when you are here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonas. Jonas, are you happy to have a couple of questions from the audience? We do have a couple of minutes. Jonas?
Questions, huh?
Any questions?
Yeah, that's the right response. Good. What do you got? No questions. Go
Amazing.
get your book.
Perfect.
Oh, we have a question. While we're waiting, go get your book. Go do the boss dev meme thing. Please make that a thing. That would be helpful.
What are some ways that you would recommend finding sponsors?
You mean finding sponsors for your work?
Right.
I actually think that it's pretty straightforward of where the sponsors are. I think the hard part is proving that you're capable of doing the work before you put in your application. So, yeah, there's a difference between how Bitcoin open source funding works and how funding works on all the other projects. The other projects are a lot more like interviewing at a company. You sort of like project that you can do it, and they're taking a bet on you. Bitcoin very much wants to see that you're already capable of doing it, and then giving you runway to continue your work. So my suggestion is that you do the work first, show your competency, and then put in your application afterwards. That helps a lot. If you have other questions, Connor will answer all of them. Yes.
Sorry, we have this one over here.
Hey, so how do you bucket which projects should categorize as core open source work on like Bitcoin Core and Lightning versus products like BTC Pay Server? Would it be eligible for like an open source platform?
Yeah, I'm not good at this. BTC Pay Server is in the group as that I think, but I don't know where the line is. It's arbitrary, and I have personal opinions.
As a non-developer who would love to contribute, what can someone like me do?
Money, we want your money. Give us your money. What are other ways? I mean, there's definitely like a role for PME stuff. I don't think there's a lot of roles like that. It takes a lot of nuance. I have tried and failed myself at some of that work. I was talking with Christoph Ono over the last few days, and I think like if this stuff isn't usable, then no one's going to care. So that matters. But my tunnel vision is creating as big an army of devs as possible. I see the other stuff around the edges. It isn't my wheelhouse. I'm trying, but I'm not very good at it.
Just to follow up to the last question, use the software, write bug reports, write documentation.
Anyone else? No questions?
Cool. Thank you so much. If you care about this stuff, if you care about open source developments and offices and where you can find more opportunities, Merch and Jay are staring at me that they have something to tell you in the other room. So if you're interested in that stuff, go to a big announcement. Big announcement. I'm being a jerk, but there is a big announcement. You should go. Great. 2 minutes. All right, thanks everyone.